All right, we are live today. We're on Redfin. Let's see, where did I find this property? Scroll down over here. We're just using Redfin. Today's day 322. Using Redfin, we're filtered on prices less than 200 grand, and we are looking for 4-bedroom units specifically today. Now let's see. It's less than 200. 322. Let me connect the chat so we have it. All right, for those of you that is following the podcast today, we just released a new episode with my friend Lily Dung. You can hear from her story about how she bought a triplex for 800 grand just outside of Boston. She's now renting it for $9,000 a month via Section 8. What a deal. What a deal. So who says you can't cash flow in an expensive market, right? Sometimes you hear everybody out there saying, hey, it's too expensive. It's too expensive. But if you're looking for it, if you're creative, chances are you're going to find something. So listen to Lily's story. Check her out. She's a great, great person. Super down to earth. Please make sure you check out the latest podcast. So let's get back to today's property. Today, look at this property, 2001 Exeter Avenue, Bessemer, Alabama, 35020. Probably looks solid. I would probably just... remodel this whole bathroom. This bathroom looks a little gringy, but for the most part, the floor is okay. I'll probably just set aside money to paint the place. And maybe there's a little bit of refinishing here. This floor looks a little tired. So we'll put that into the renovations later, okay? So now what we want to do next is make sure we get the rents. To get the rents first, we're going to get and look for the word county on the Redfin website. That's going to give you the county that this property is in. And then we're going to Google HUD FMR. FMR stands for fair market rent. We're going to click on the first link. We're going to click on access small area FMRs. The HUD website just released 2025 rents about 4 or 5 days ago. And hey, this is how you can figure out where is your upside now, right? You are on top of it. You are literally underwriting deals every single day with me. So you are going to be one of the first people to notice this stuff. Some people might not ever notice it for quite a while. And you're going to see that in this zip code, which is 35020, the rent ceiling for a 3-bed is $1,420. The rent ceiling for a 4-bed is $1,580. So let's go ahead and write this one out. Let's go look at what we got from this. Okay. Start a new file. Boom. Boom. Whoops. Copy this address. So start a new file. $817. All right. So this property is listed for 120 grand. We just got the rent ceiling of 1580. Oh, we're looking at the same zip code yesterday. I should remember that. And 1420. Great. I don't need to re-update those numbers. And now I can also go to my market rent. So now I need to compare my rent ceiling against my market rent. To get my market rent, I have to go to affordablehousing.com. I can go to the owner section. I can go to the market rent estimator. And here's where I'm going to plug in the address, okay? When I plug in the address, there you go, and I plug in a bedroom count, now you're going to see by bedroom count what the average market rent is within a certain radius. And you're going to see right here that within a 2.87 mile radius, the average rent is $1,517. $1,517. That was a 2.7 mile radius. That's pretty good, to be honest with you. That's a lot higher than what I've been seeing. Maybe the rents have started to catch up a little bit here. 1440 and 1933. So when I underwrite this deal, I'm going to use the lower of the two, right? So this property just looks a little tired, just a little tired. So unless you get it fully up and running, you might not get the top of the top rents. So I might probably still try to renovate, not that bathroom. That bathroom looks fine, but I'll probably renovate this one. This one looks a little bit more tired. So let's go ahead and use 1,500, okay? Because typically why I'm using 1,500 is because that's the lower of the two amounts, right? And The reason when you use lower of the two amounts is for two reasons. Typically, the rent ceiling for 1580 also includes utilities. So if you don't include utilities, you have to deduct a certain amount from your rent ceiling. Now, when you compare it to the market rent, there's also a test called the rent reasonableness test. All right. So what I have pulled up right now is the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook. Housing Choice Voucher is called HCV. It's previously known as Section 8, but they rebranded it to Housing Choice Voucher because of all the negative connotation that used to be associated with Section 8. Now, if you go to this guidebook and you go to Section 2.2, right here it says, in conducting rent reasonableness, it says the PHA, or the Public Housing Authority, must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So obviously size, unit type, all that stuff matters. But when I know that this is using the market rent for 4-bedroom properties, chances are these are all 4-bedroom single family homes, because you don't really often see 4-bedroom apartments being built. So I have pretty good confidence that this is going to be the reasonable rent in this situation. All right. So now that I got 1,500 in there, all right, I need to figure out what am I going to cash flow on this deal. So let's go ahead and plug in the rest of the numbers. Okay. So I'm gonna go to my rehab calculator spreadsheet first, and I'm gonna start plugging in some numbers. Okay. I'm assuming the roof is okay, but I'm still gonna put aside about $1,500 in row 6 for a roof repair, because sometimes there's issues in here that you cannot see from just the photos. I always set aside about $500, row 46, in the rehab calculators tab for landscaping, right? You got to keep up with the property and make sure the exterior is maintained while you're getting a rent ready. Now, painting, I'm going to assume I need to repaint this entire home. So I'm going to do 1667. That's about $3 a square foot. That's a $5,000 paint job, just using rough numbers based on what I have seen in the market. Now, for my toilets, I always replace them with high pressure flush toilets. And that's really because I don't want any clogged toilet calls. And I have all high pressure flush toilets in my own home, in my rental properties in Scottsdale. So I don't want to get those clogged toilet calls, because anytime you send a plumber out there, it's probably going to cost you like $200. So I might as well save myself the energy, save myself the service call, save myself the $200, and just spend it up front and just prevent those issues from happening. That's my personal preference. Okay. Now, next thing I have is I'm probably going to replace the vanity right there for the other bathroom, vanity mirror. I'll place a sink. And I'm not sure if there was a new shower head, new bathroom power. So I'm just going to add all this for the extra bathroom stuff, because the structure is still okay, but I just want to update it cosmetically. So this, all in all, the bathroom renovation is costing me about $3,600. Just kind of spruce it up a little bit, make it look a little bit prettier, attract a better tenant. All right. So now what I have is a 12.7K rehab. Again, I don't know my rehab is going to be that accurate, but I just need to know how far off and whether or not I'm going to cash flow and meet my expected return. You're not going to get it right? You're not going to get it exactly right just by looking at photos. There's no way you're going to do that. The point of this exercise is just to figure out whether or not it's worth our effort to go deeper in the property. By deeper, I mean, is it worth our time sending someone out there to walk the property, get more photos for us, send a contractor out there to give us a bid, which might cost us like $300, $400, right? Because a good contractor is going to be really busy and they don't want to deal with tire kickers. So this allows you to figure out whether or not it's worth you kicking around a tire a little bit more. Okay. So before I had this multiply by 5, because yesterday I 5x the rehab. So today I got to remove that multiply by 5. So now I got my 12 grand rehab that we talked about. I got $1,500 for my rent, and then I'm gonna get my taxes and insurance right from Redfin. So I'm gonna scroll down here. You see that property tax is 107, so I'm gonna use that number. Obviously, you're gonna double check with the county assessor records, but again, the whole point of the exercise is to figure out whether it's worth your time. So make sure you do that. All right, I already used $1,500 for rents, right? We talked about it. We got to use the lower of the two because we want to be conservative in our rents. And then from our insurance number, we have $93, and I'm going to do equals 93 times 1.2, right? $93 is the estimated insurance round rent. I always want to be more conservative. And I also understand that insurance companies view an investment property as more risky. So they are typically going to charge more in terms of your insurance premium. So that's why I'm adding a 20% premium for this property, because it's an investment property. Now, I got 10% set aside for maintenance and my war chest, quote unquote. But this is really money that I'm putting aside right now and forgetting about it. Because in my opinion, this money does not belong to me, right? We all understand a roof is going to replace in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? Depending on how old the roof is right now. We all know that air conditioning units are going to cost money to replace, even if it's just the parts. You gotta make sure that you send someone out there to take a look at it constantly. Like, I just spent $5,000 just replacing the parts in my air conditioning units in Scottsdale. So just be mindful. This is money that doesn't belong to you. You know that HVAC is going to get replaced. You know for a fact that your water heater is going to go down at some point. So if you don't set aside money every single month, you might get a $20,000 rehab in 5, 10 years from now and realize you made no money because you never set aside that money. So don't be that person. Don't be that person that realizes a little bit too late that you didn't make any money on your investment for all the time and energy that you spent. All right, I got $150 for my property management and I got 5% for my vacancy. So now the next thing I need to do is figure out, okay, well, how much am I going to pay for my down payment? So I got 25% set aside right now for my down payment in F19. In my down payment amount is going to be equals to B4, which is my asking price, multiplied by my down payment percentage in F19, and that's going to equals to $30,000. Okay. I got 2.5% set aside for closing costs, so that's $3,000, and I got the $12,000 for rehab that we talked about earlier. All right, so now that I got my expenses in and my payments, the next thing I need to do is figure out, okay, well, if I'm getting a loan at an 8% interest rate, what am I financing? So if I go to B4 and I subtract by my down payment percentage of amount of $30,000, I will be financing $90,000. And right now I'm estimating roughly around 8% interest rate. So all in all, this flows down to, if I rent this property out as a 4-bedroom for $1,500, I would now be cash flowing 6.5% return, cash flowing $246, and that's 6.5% return on my capital, assuming I bought this property for $120,000 with a $12,700 rehab, right? Assuming I bought this property at 8%. Now, to me, that's not a deal, right? I think you can go buy a treasury bill for a 30-year treasury for maybe 4% return on your money, 5%. So to me, that's not worth the execution risk, right? What does execution risk mean? It means that, why am I taking this time and energy to buy this property, negotiate with the property, get an inspector out there, get a contractor out there to repair it, and hopefully the contractor does what he or she says they're going to do, meaning they show up on time, they don't try to rip me off, they don't open up the wall and say, oh, we found this behind a wall, there's all these issues, now it's going to cost you extra 10 to 20 grand, and blow up your budget completely, right? That can happen. That's what I call execution risk, right? Then you might have execution risk from, what if you get delays from the Section 8 Housing Authority and they don't come out right away to inspect your home? And now then you have 2 extra months of holding costs because you got to pay the mortgage. That's execution risk. What if you get a really, really bad tenant and now all of a sudden the tenant doesn't pay their portion? Yeah, Section 8 will guarantee their portion of the rent, but if a tenant doesn't guarantee their portion of the rent and all of a sudden they're late or they are not paying their portion, it might be 20%, 30% of their income. What happens? Now you got to spend all the time chasing them down. You got to evict them. You got to send all these notices. That's execution risk, and that's spent. It's a lot of energy spent. So you really got to decide, what is your criteria that you are willing to undertake this execution risk for. Now, obviously, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. Your risk profile, your risk tolerance has to be based on your own investment goals and your own preferences. That's why you got to talk to your own investment professionals, right? Some folks might be out there and say, hey, I'm okay with a 0% cash on cash return because I might be buying in a area, let's just make it up, right? Southern California, where they go up by 5% every single year. If I'm buying $1 million property and it's going up by 5% every single year, I'm making 50 grand in appreciation. That's way better than me trying to make $200 a month, right? That's only $2,400 a year. So different strategy. if you're buying for appreciation, it's speculative. It really is. It's speculative. It's very risky. So you got to decide whether that's your strategy. Or do you create a portfolio that has some that are speculative based on appreciation? You have some that's more cash flow. That's something that you have to decide for yourself. So the whole point of the exercise is I want to tell you, okay, watch what happens when I lower my asking price to 100 grand. Well, at 102 grand, I will be at 10.2%. So to me, it's not a deal at 120 grand, but it's a deal at 102, assuming everything else stayed constant and I can rent it out for $1,500 and I can cash with $345 a month. Now it's a 10.2% return. So now all of a sudden this looks better, right? Even though my rehab stayed the same at $12,700, 25% down with 8% interest. Now, what I want you to pay attention to is, okay, what if you locked up this deal, right? This is our fair. What if we lock up this deal and all of a sudden our rehab is like 3 times as much? So we're going to go to B6 and I'm going to multiply by 3. And now all of a sudden my rehab instead of 12 grand, it's 38 grand, right? Watch what happened to my cash and cash return. It dropped from 10.2 to 6.2. Oh, that's not good. So if I want to lower my asking price, let's say to $80,000, watch what happens, right? 75 grand. Now all of a sudden I'm back to 10.1%. So you took the emotion out of it, right? You locked it for 102 grand, but all of a sudden the rehab 3x, and now you can go back to the seller, right? This is why you got to have that inspection contingency. Now all of a sudden you go to the seller and say, well, I can't make this deal work. The only way I can do this deal is if we agree on a $75,000 purchase price, because my cash and cash return will be so far off, because this is the only way I can get back up to a 10.1% return on my capital, right? And this is assuming it's a $38,000 rehab with a 25% down and an 8% interest rate. All right. So one last scenario. Right now in the news, they're talking about interest rates going down. Okay, well, what if I lower my interest rate? What if the interest rate now goes from 8% to 7%? Now, keep in mind, our rehab right now is still $38,000, right? It's still 3x, but my market conditions are better. So just by going from 8 to a 7, I went from 10.1 to a 10.9% return. So now my willingness to pay, assuming my bottom line number is 10%, now all of a sudden I'm willing to pay $81,000, right? Even though my rehab 3x instead of 75 grand, now I'm willing to pay $81,000, which is 6 grand more than before. My rehab is still at 38,000. I'm at 25% down, but my interest rate is now 7% instead of 8%. And this still allows me to cash out $502, assuming I can rent it out for $1,500. That's a 4-bedroom. And this would now be a 10% return. So the whole point of the exercise is for you guys to understand, hey, how do I take emotion out of the deal and go with the market condition and go with what's being presented to me, right? You looked at it at first scenario, 120 grand, that doesn't work. But if I bought it for 102, that's okay. But all of a sudden my rehab 3x to $38,000, and now I'm only willing to pay 75 grand for this property, right? But now all of a sudden, hey, maybe in 2 months from now, after my inspection is done, my contractor is done, and all of a sudden market conditions have changed, and now the interest rates have dropped in a month from now to 7%. Well, now all of a sudden I'm willing to pay 81 grand, right? This is how you take emotion out of the deal. This is how you stay objective to your own conditions. And this is why you have to figure out what levers can you pull to make this deal a deal for you. If that makes sense, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you guys haven't subscribed to the Affordable Housing Podcast, I would really appreciate it. I've had some people leave some hateful reviews on Apple Podcasts, and that's okay. They just don't understand what's going on with affordable housing. Sometimes just hardworking folks, just like my parents, that wants to put food on the table. So I would really appreciate it if you guys can leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Just look up affordable housing and real estate investing. I would really appreciate the support. If you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, just go to affordablehousing.io, and you guys can just go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, and you guys can just plug in your name, your email, your phone number, and that's the fastest we get a copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks. I tweaked it, I modified it so that it could fit my own way of analyzing deals. So that's it. That's it for today. I hope you guys have an amazing Saturday with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. I'll be back here again tomorrow for day 323. We're almost at a year in a row. Isn't that crazy, guys? It seems like just yesterday when I said, hey, I'm going to go underwrite a deal every single day for 100 days. And here we are at 322. So I hope this inspires you. I hope you guys will do this alongside with me. I hope you guys listen to this video today and find one area to explain something better than I did, to use a better analogy, to use a better metaphor, to explain something better so that we can lift each other up and we can all do better together. So that's how we solve this affordable housing problem. All right. I appreciate all your help. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Don't forget to check out the latest podcast with Lily Dung. And thank you so much. I'll talk to you all tomorrow for day 323.